Well, staying on the theme of technology, we know advances in technology are transforming the way we live, but they're also changing the nature of work. And how can Latinas be better prepared for the future that work brings? Let's find out from the experts. Please welcome Dr. Cecilia Aragon, the Director of Human-Centered Data Science Lab at the University of Washington. She is the first Latina named to the rank of full professor in the College of Engineering at UW in its 100-year history. Viviana Costa, Executive Director of the Hispanic IT Executive Council, an organization dedicated to connecting and developing Hispanic leaders in the technology industry. Josie Goitisolo, founder and CEO of Codea. Codea introduces Latinas ages 8 to 13 to coding, 21st century skills, entrepreneurship, and role models through year-round programming. And Nina Roki, Executive Director of the National Women's Business Council, where she leads efforts to explore the challenges and opportunities surrounding women in STEM. Joining us once more is Juleka Lantigua Williams, who's going to moderate this conversation.
You guys are still very, very good looking. I walked out of the stage after the last panel, and I just walked in and I was like, I am so pumped. I feel like I got life juice running through me after that panel, and I'm equally pumped for this conversation. I've asked these brilliant women to start us off by sharing with us something that gives them hope in the STEM field, in whether it's at their organization, nationally, internationally. There's that much touted all-women flight coming from NASA, and so that's one of the big messages recently related to the field. So I'd like to hear from all of them, starting with Cecilia at the end, about what gives her hope in her field today.
So we were just speaking about this, Juleka. I'm a professor at the University of Washington, and I'm privileged to work with amazing students. And it is the young people that I talk with every day that give me hope, because they are so engaged and so connected and so well informed. And they all say they're going to vote.
Yeah, that's definitely hope.
Good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. So I work for an organization that brings together a community of technology executives from across the country that happen to be Hispanic, Latino. Just to kind of put things in context, in terms of stats, having Latinos in tech, it's a really small percentage. However, when we put together events that brings together these technology and executives, and when I see a room full of women that come to these summits, that brings me hope, because they do exist. They are out there. And when someone says to me, wow, I didn't realize there were so many Latinos in technology that look like me, that gives me hope. And so I think there's a bright future ahead of us.
Yeah, agreed. Hence me being pumped to be in this room today with you. Josie.
So for me, I'm going to echo, it's great to see the women who are in technology, but there's especially Latina women, but as a whole, we have less women in technology than 1984. What I'm excited about, what makes me hopeful, is that finally women in technology, Latinas, are starting to see others like them in technology, and because of the political discussion or the universal discussion now on making sure that underserved communities who are in STEM literally get help as they move forward, navigating their careers to keep going higher, and that makes me hopeful.
Thank you.
So at the National Women's Business Council, we conducted some research a few years back on millennial women entrepreneurs, and I'm really encouraged by the results. What the results showed was that millennial women entrepreneurs are the most educated generation to date. We're the most likely to have STEM degrees, and in addition to that, we're the most diverse generation to date, which is really exciting. If you look at the percentage of millennial entrepreneurs, it's almost at parity with the population in the United States. That's a really big deal. So I'm really encouraged by those numbers, and I'm excited to see where the future generations, right, the Gen Zs that we were talking about backstage, what those numbers are going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, this is very exciting from an outsider's perspective, you know, because I definitely sucked at math and science, but I get excited to think about women like them, you know, making things happen. So let's talk a little bit about women like you. Right? Because just from the 10 minutes that we've spent together, I see some commonalities among you. You're wicked smart, like they say in Boston. You're also very driven, but you're also quite assured in your identities. And so I want to hear from a couple of you about how the path to math and science and technology became clear to you as you were forming your individual identities, and then how you pursued that. Because it's not always clear, right, when we're trying to figure out what we're going to do when we grow up. So how did you know? What did you find in yourselves? Anyone can take the question. Cecilia.
All right, so I had a long and kind of winding journey to get to where I am. And so I want to take a step back and talk about the research that I did when I started out. So becoming the first Latina full professor in the College of Engineering at the University of Washington was shocking to me. And I started doing some research into it, and I found out that we've heard how terrible the situation is with discrimination against immigrants in this country. And I know about that firsthand because my parents were immigrants and we experienced it. But did you know that there are 10 times as many foreign-born Latino professors of engineering in the US as there are US-born? And there are only 10, that's 10 individuals, Latina, US-born Latina professors of engineering in this country, and only 3 full professors, including me. You know, something is wrong here. And to get to your answer, you know, what is it that caused this? And it's internal racism and sexism. They feed it to you young, and you digest it for life. And so I was a Latina, I was a girl, and I was a math nerd. That was 3 giant strikes against me with my classmates, and my teachers dismissed me too. And that set me up to dismiss myself for years. So how did I get beyond it? I found out it only takes one person to counter those low expectations and prove to you that you can do anything you want and you can be anything you want. And I think we've heard this, right? I mean, one of the Congresswomen Barragan, talked about that one counselor who told her just apply. And in my case, it was so powerful that it taught me to soar, not just metaphorically, but
quite literally.
Literally, I became an air show pilot as well as an academic. And that, for me, that one voice was my father. And now that I'm a professor, I try to be that one voice for my students.
Yeah, thank you for that. It's, give it up, yes. She was actually a competitive flyer on the national US team, okay? Exactly, no
and
big
I was
deal.
the first Latina on the US aerobatic team, too.
Not to be corny, but the sky's the limit, ladies. So I love that answer because it brings us back to the role of mentoring, right? But what is it that mentors can bring out in us, right? And what is it that if we are mentoring, we should think about bringing out in other people? Josie.
Well, you know, I was only mentored by one woman. My background is news, and when I became a news director, there were no women. And my mentor was Ruth Sperling, and she was tough as nails. And I had to learn everything by myself. And I was always pushed in. and there weren't other women in my field. The Me Too movement, never spoken about it, but I lived it. And so I think that for me, we're not a nation of acculturators, and I worked in Spanish TV for a long time, and you had to know your audience and what they needed. So for me, it was about creating, and I was only in news, but I always did a background piece to explain, this is why Iowa is important. This is what a caucus is. This is, so we became mentors. The actual news business became mentors. And as a news director, you always have to see the forest beyond the trees and understand what it is that girls and women are going to need.
Absolutely.
So I would say definitely for me, it's the role of my parents that really kind of took that mentorship space for me. So I'm the first in my family to graduate from college, the first in my family to graduate from law school, and my parents just always unconditionally believed in me and everything that I wanted to accomplish. Grew up in a very middle-class Cuban-American exile community in Miami, and I think a little bit of it, because I was second generation, was my parents were overcompensating for what they didn't have. So they were like, you're gonna go to the best summer camp possible, you're gonna go to the best high school possible, and they were just like, this is, you know, you're gonna go to law school and you're gonna be the best that you can be. So for me, it was definitely the role of parents.
But let's parse that out a little bit, because sometimes some of that encouragement feels like just pressure to sort of toe the line, live the American dream, do the things everybody else has ever done to quote unquote succeed. Was there a difference at home for you?
I think I definitely felt pressure, but I don't think the pressure was bad. I'm happy that I had the pressure. And now looking back now, I'm glad that I had the extra push and the extra pressure.
I just, one sentence. I came back from El Salvador. I always had to fight to be able to cover what my reporters covered, our reporters covered. So I get home, I've been shot at, I had dreams, and you know, I was in El Salvador, and my mother says, vale la pena. So it was, so if it was up to her, I would have worked in a bank, in finance. She did not get it. She associated journalists with, you know, single women. So that's really it. I mean, but you know, yes.
Viviana?
So I think for me, the pressure came more from my peers. And I think in hindsight, I think it came from my non-Latino peers. I wanted to keep up. I wanted to be the one that was, oh, they're doing that, I'm gonna do that. They're doing that, I'm gonna do that. They're going to that school, I'm gonna go to that school. And so I think it's like a pressure on ourselves, and also as you see, but it was a good pressure, because, you know, it pushed me to do what, and to Nina's point, where I wanted to go. But it was kind of, I always had my family, you know, there to support me. But I think it was more the external pressures that were the ones that kind of were driving force for me.
Yeah. Let's talk a little about pathways, because the message is you got to be a math geek, you've got to be great at computers, you just have to have this natural gift for analysis, right? And I don't really think, and at least Cecilia's agreeing with me, I don't think that that's the case. So I want to hear from each of you about not alternative, but adjacent pathways to come into the work that you guys have done. So Cecilia, let's start with you.
Well, so first of all, anybody can learn math. It is not just a gift that you have.
Professor.
No, really, I think so much of this is this societal, this internal racism and sexism. You know, in middle grade, one of my teachers said, "Why are you working so hard in math? You should be getting a boyfriend." You know, and when a teacher says that, I mean, I was fortunate that my father said, no, you're gonna be the best at math, yeah. But, you know, this can be teachers, we can be parents, we can be mentors to other people. And it doesn't matter whether you're male or female or Latino or not, you can mentor someone and give them that voice and tell them that they can learn math. It is teachable. In other countries, the cab drivers all say, oh yeah, I was really good at math when I was in elementary school. It has to do with societal pressure. being taught, oh, you're not good at that. Leave that difficult stuff for the smarter people. It's a mistake. If you don't understand it, the teacher is not presenting it well.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So
Deanna.
my path to my role was a little bit of a more roundabout way. Full disclosure, I am not a technologist by trade, nor did I study it. I have always worked with the Hispanic community. That's always been kind of my passion. I started out in a nonprofit, actually here in DC. It's how I started my career with formerly NCLR, working in civil rights. I then, then I worked for a technology startup company that helped college students and Hispanic families get access to college and how to navigate that space as first-generation families, which is very difficult when you don't really get the system. So that's kind of like how I started in terms of like a technology route. And then I came to high tech. I managed the operations of the organization, but I am exposed to a fantastic network of Hispanic technology executives, and so that's I've been learning my way through the technology space. And I mean, nowadays, every company is a technology company that happens to provide a product or a service. So in some way or fashion, you're connected to technology, whether it's marketing, data analytics, operations, distribution to your channels. All of that somehow is connected to technology. So I think at some level, all of us are technologists. Maybe I'm not at your level, but I'd like to say that at some level, we are connected to technology.
So it's almost by osmosis that we are not just tech natives and tech savvy, but we are also, by consuming it, we're changing it. So let's talk about how it is that you can look at your tech consumption, your tech usage, and figure out what might be a field, a career path for yourself, right? Like when I mentor very, very young people, I always say, what's the thing you spend the most time doing and time flies? That's the thing that you should be doing. I don't know what that is. For me, it was this, right? What is that thing that you're doing? So as people who are constantly plugged in, how can younger people who are exploring different career paths, think about, if I want to get into tech, how can I evaluate the things that I love, that are part of how I live my life, and carve out a career path for myself?
So I myself can barely turn on a computer. If you would have told me a year ago that I would have been on a panel about STEM and women in STEM, I would have been shocked. But I can tell you that the future definitely is tech related. And so if you can use whatever career and whatever passion you have to be involved in STEM, I think that would be great. Currently, as a lawyer, I never thought I would be in the role that I'm at and working on STEM policy and advocating on behalf of women business owners and entrepreneurs in STEM. So
yeah,
you never know.
Intellectual property law is the next frontier. Anybody who wants to be a lawyer, take 2 years off, then go to law school and study intellectual property
and the
law.
percentage of women in intellectual property
You heard it here
is
first.
very low.
Yes.
So we need more women in those fields. We need more women that have acquired patents.
Yes. And learn about galactic rights. There are these things now being put into contracts where record labels are requiring people to give up their galactic licensing rights so they can play their music on spaceships. Somebody over there is paying attention. Pathways.
I think we are at a very important time globally for civilization, because so many careers exist today that didn't exist 5 years from now, and the girls that I work with in middle school are going to be out in the workforce by 2028, between 2025 and 2030. At that point, it's estimated over 80% of jobs don't exist. So for me, it's critical that we start with middle school students. Certifications, credentials, badges are being issued in many states, not many states, in a certain number of states, but that starts in 6th grade. So if the parents have no idea what these careers look like, if the school counselors don't know what pathways, then I think we have to work as a village, but start at that level. It's critical.
To add to her point, I think one of the things that when you're trying to figure out what it is you want to do, because it can change in so many different points of your life, but I think the important thing that you need to always be aware of is agility and adaptability. Companies, job titles, job roles, they're changing constantly, and it gets faster and faster every year. To be able to showcase that you can be agile and you can adapt and change and go with the times and the trends, that is incredibly important, because you could study one thing, in your early 20s, do an internship, and you're like, yeah, that's what I want to do. But you have to continue learning. You have to continue educating yourself and be agile. It's never going to stay static.
Never.
It's going to move, and you have to be able to move with it.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a really, really important thing to remember. Right now, there's a study out that says that the most valuable higher level degree is going to be an MFA, not an MBA, right? And that's because the future is in ideas. And the future is in managing people with ideas and managing people who can think much bigger. So if you want to move beyond a job, what you're going to have is a lot of technology know-how, but those soft skills of being able to lead and harness creativity in whatever field you're in. Yeah, collaboration is huge.
Yeah. One of the fastest growing fields in computer science is how do humans interact with technology? Yes. And that is just growing exponentially, and it's going to continue because we don't really understand how people collaborate around technology. So that needs to be studied, and there's always jobs in that area.
Human-computer interaction.
Computer interaction, yes.
And gentlemen.
All right, we've got 4.5 minutes for questions from the audience, which, forgive me, I skipped last time, but I was having a lot of fun up here, as you guys can tell. Yes, in the beautiful spotted black and white dress.
I found that trying to frame to him and his friends and even just other young Latinas that I've mentored throughout time, an industry that I don't know about and I don't participate in, but framing it in a creative way is difficult for them to understand. I get it now. I've been to enough of these summits. I see the cool things that can be done. How can we, just like in my own personal life as my cousins are growing up, and sort of inspire them to think about it creatively, whether it's tools that you know about online that they should check out. Coding boot camps aren't really available in all places. I have a lot of family in Mexico. And so how can I sort of inspire them to think differently than just going down the paths that we've all gone through?
Thank you, great question.
Well, so send them to the University of Washington. Human-centered design and engineering. It's a combination of computer science and design, creativity, and art. We do charrettes where we go out to middle schoolers and we teach them about user-centered design. And how can you combine computer science with creativity? I mean, and if you think about it, how many of us have iPhones, all right? Why was that so successful? It was the technology, but it was especially the design. That device is a pleasure to use. And these young people are going to be the ones who will come up with the next creative use of technology. So it's very inspiring. I mean, when I talk to a young Latino who's 19, he says he's going to start a company and change the world. So,
to your point, Coursera is available across the country.
Yes.
edX is available across the country. MIT has a ton of
and Harvard too.
Yeah,
So-
Harvard, and they're free.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
And then
links,
for-
guys, and massive online courses.
And for you, for human-centered design,
Yeah.
there is, professors from Stanford who teach design thinking online, critical. And then there's Udemy, and there's Treehouse. if they want to get background into, and grow from the very bottom, certainly to prepare them later. But Coursera is incredible. And you have courses by area that you want to study, whether you want to be an engineer, whether you want to go into data science. So, sorry.
Thank you. No, that was fantastic. There is so much online that is free, legitimate, and available. So a lot of universities are offering the MOOCs, massive online, open online courses, and anyone can get into those. A lot of tech universities in India are also putting up all of the lectures, and a lot of them are in English. So that's another place where you can follow along and basically audit entire courses in different tech fields, because in India, it is a national priority to make everyone technology conversant. And so the state demands that publicly funded universities and private universities that are heavily subsidized put courses online. So there are a lot of resources around the world. All right, one more question in the back. Hi. Someone give this, oh, sorry, the mic was handed over. We'll ask your question after.
I don't know. Oh, there it is. Well, first of all, thank you, because you are educators, and I can see that. And my name is Jasmine Mowat. I'm the first Latina running for Virginia Senate in Virginia, so thank you. And I want to ask you something a little bit more like off what's the IT work. But I see there's a lot of Latinas that right now, they're working on what's legislation, and we're trying to push what's the really important issue here, which it is what kind of legislations we can pass and how we can make happen that more Latinas end up in positions of power. So in my case, for example, I'm training women to be politicians, but I just want to know, because I want to replicate myself. I don't want to be the first one that's running for Senate and just be the last one. I want to make sure that there's going to be many women like us taking power, because it's very important that we stay in positions of power, because no matter how good we are, no matter how good attorneys we are, because I am an attorney, no matter how good different professions we are on the top, it's not going to happen if we don't tap into the legislation.
Okay.
Because we need to make sure that. So my question to you guys is...
Policy, right?
No, actually, what is your labor? I listened to Dr. Aragon, that she's saying, I'm asking my students to vote. So I want to ask, I hope I have enough time, but each one of you, what is your labor right now for pushing that we actually end up getting into the power of the United States?
Okay, we're now talking about politics, but we are also out of time. So let's be considerate, and in 2 sentences, talk about on-the-ground activism that can lead to real change. Go.
So I think right now we have a lot of women on the Democratic side in Congress, and I think Republicans need to do a better job of on the ground recruiting more Latinas and diverse candidates to represent their communities in Congress.
Bring everybody to the party.
Votes count. So I think that's my answer.
So go out and vote.
Yep.
I think it's honestly just continuing conversations and being open and being vulnerable with the things that you believe you need and what our community needs. One conversation isn't enough. You have to keep having the same conversation over and over again, and so keep that dialogue open.
Yep. So work to end gerrymandering, so it's one person, one vote. Yes.
Yes.
And get more diverse people into tech, because tech workers have a lot of power.
Yeah. My answer to that is, guys, run for the Board of Education in your town.
Absolutely.
That is the closest, most accessible, and in your zip code, most powerful political office you can have. And it's great training ground. From there, run for the county. From there, run for the city. From there, run for the state, right? It is a process. But if you get on the board, you will start to really understand how the machinery of your local politics works. And then you'll be unstoppable from there. I'm sorry, because I won't get invited back if we take up all the time for the next panel, but it's been a pleasure. It's been life-affirming. Please, let's thank them.